Hello there, greetings, good afternoon, and welcome here to the Prog Monster. My hat's crooked. I want that. I can turn my head sideways and my hat will be straight. Yeah, okay. Anyways, I want to welcome you here to the Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show. This is a show that is dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So we're starting a new show tonight, Thursday night. Time for a new one. Had a couple shows running fairly length of time on the Thursday night. Decided to give them a break. Picked two new shows. The first one's been going for a couple of weeks now, the Hidden Gems. This one is just going to be called simply Outliers. So this is a show in which I just want to talk a bit about an album. I'm really taking anything. I just want to talk a little bit about an album that maybe doesn't really quite fit in the general kind of direction that the band was going. You know, maybe they had a few albums and then this one came and then they went back to that, or maybe they just were following a certain trend and all of a sudden they jumped off the trend and went on something completely different. There's different ways that this happens. This album, I think, fits that bill. And I don't want to give the impression that I think these Outliers are not good albums. I think they are. In some cases, they're better than what they were doing. But in this case, it's a different album. It doesn't really follow the flow of the other albums that came before or the ones that went after. They kind of follow this kind of flow. They seem like they belong to the same band. This one maybe doesn't quite feel that way to me. Well, it doesn't feel that way. Maybe some people feel it differently about it. But the album we're going to talk about for the first episode is Genesis, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. This was the last album that Peter Gabriel was a member of Genesis for. It's a double album, so both of those things, I think, have contributed a little bit to the different sound on this album. So when I think of this album, when I think of the other albums that went before it, Trespass, and we're not going to talk about the first album because that first album was different than the usual Genesis sound. So you got Trespass, and then you've got Nursery Crime, you've got Foxtrot, you've got Selling England by the Pound. Then you have this, and then you have Trick of the Tail. A trick of the tail, in case there's anybody out there who likes their everything punctuated. Wind and Wuthering, if you're again that type of person, and then there were three. So basically, it followed kind of a trajectory going up and kind of going along at this kind of pace they all sound relatively the same. Now, I mean, they're not the same. Some of them are different. They're different than each other, but they still have that basic Genesis sound to them. That lots of keyboards, some longer tracks with some intricate musicianship and some great vocals and stuff like that. This album, not so much. This album is one of the difference in this album, other than the fact that it's a double album, is that most of the tracks are shorter. It's got a couple in the cage. The Colony of Slippery Men and The Arrival of the Visiting Dr. Raven. Both of these tracks are fairly long, but there's a lot of smaller bits and pieces here. And it sounds, but it isn't so much the technical stuff from the other albums. It's the sound of the album is very different to me. It has a different vibe to it. Definitely it's Genesis, but it just sounds like it doesn't have that. Maybe, I guess the best way to put this is it doesn't have that really fully English sound to it that I come to expect, the quirky kind of English way about them that you get on Nursery Crime and Trespass and Selling England by the Pound and Foxtrot and the other two as well. The one is post Peter Gabriel. This one doesn't really have that. It sounds a little bit more almost Broadway-ish in many ways. I don't know if that makes any sense to people, but For me, that's what it sounds like. And I often wondered, why do I feel like it's different than the others? Because this actually reminds me more of Peter Gabriel's first solo album than it does of the Genesis stuff. Now, maybe some people will say I'm completely off on this, and I might be. But just a feeling I have. Like, when I think of that first Peter Gabriel solo album, this album often comes to my mind as well. I think there's a kind of a feel there. It's like he went from this to his first solo album and kind of carried on a little bit of that. Whereas the band members, the ones that stayed with Genesis, went almost right back to that similar sound that you got on Selling England by the Pound. There's that kind of quirky English humor and everything. The songs were more like that than this. This was different, I think. So anyways, it's just amusing, I guess, of why I think this is a bit of an outlier. It's a good album. I like it. I don't love it like those other ones, and I think the reason is that there's a couple of reasons. One, it's longer. I think you could have cut out about half of this album and made it a 2-album or a 1-album CD, maybe a longer 1-album CD than the others, and it probably would have been happier. There's a lot of stuff in here that just doesn't really interest me or drive any kind of, I don't know, connection to it, I guess. But I still think it's a good album. The stuff that is good on this is as good as any Genesis stuff. However, I've always kind of had that feeling about it. And it also took me much longer to get this album, to buy this album than the others. A lot of that is because it was a double album, so it was more expensive. But a lot of it was I wasn't in a hurry to get it like I was the other Genesis. As soon as the opportunity came to buy those other Genesis albums, I bought them right away without even a thought about it. But this one, I kind of whispered about it, and then until I started the channel, then I thought, well, you've got them all. You might as well get this one too, which I did. So good album, and many people will say this is their best album. Can't really disagree with it. I can see their points of view. Points of view might be right, but I just don't feel that way about it. To me, it's a different album than the other ones. It doesn't really fit into the flow nicely. Probably, to me, if you put it in with the Peter Gabriel beginning, I would have probably been a little bit more accepting of it, possibly. But still, good album. And just a little bit of a discussion about why I feel like it's a different album and why I think it's an outlier. So for me, Selling England by the Pound. The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, a little bit of an outlier to me. So anyways, that's just my opinion. So we'll do this show once every couple of weeks for a while. I may actually rotate some of the other shows back in. I might have like 4 of them going at once, just to keep it fresh. And I hope you've enjoyed this first episode. So please hit the like and subscribe. If you want to make any comments about The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, by all means do so. If you totally disagree with me, I completely understand. You can make your comments about that as well. If you totally agree with me, you can do that as well. Whatever you want to do is fine with me. And we will be back next week with another episode of Hidden Gems. Looking forward to seeing you all then. So take care and have yourself a good evening, and goodbye.